My children humiliated me in front of my granddaughter, but her silent tears changed my entire will. They just didn't know yet how much. It feels like yesterday, but it was just a few short weeks ago. My son Mark and my daughter Sarah, they brought me here, to the homestead. This isn't just a house to me, it's my entire life. Every single memory I hold dear, every precious moment, it's all woven into the very fabric of these old walls, into the earth of this land. This is where I raised them, where I taught them to walk, where I watched their father plant that grand old oak tree we still have out front, the one with the swing hanging from its strongest branch. They brought me back to this sacred place, not for a family gathering, not for a loving visit, but to tell me, quite plainly, that I was no longer a part of their future, not in the comfortable, secure way I had always envisioned. They sat me down on the porch swing, the one that creaks just a little, a sound I've known, of modernizing, of progress. They used words like optimization and return on investment. Then they started talking about something they called a comfortable assisted living facility. They made it sound so lovely, so desirable. But my heart, it just shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces right there on that familiar porch. Their voices were so calm, almost disturbingly practical. It was like they were discussing the sale of some old, worn-out piece of furniture, something completely worthless, and not the destiny of their own mother. Not me, the woman who had given them everything. I just sat there, listening, trying desperately to make sense of the words, trying to breathe through the crushing weight of their rejection, this quiet, deep humiliation. What they didn't grasp, what they couldn't possibly see in their tunnel vision, was that at that exact moment, something profound was shifting. My sweet granddaughter, Lily, was there with us. Just 10 years old, so small, so innocent. Her silent tears, they weren't just tears. They were sealing their fate, though they couldn't possibly have known it then. They didn't count on that. They never could have. Mark and Sarah, they sat across from me at the small wooden table. They unfurled this large blueprint, all technical lines and cold numbers. I looked at their faces, my 2 children, my Mark, my Sarah, and I saw nothing of the warmth, the gratitude, the love I always hoped to find there. The kind of gratitude I felt I had earned, penny by painstaking penny, over all these years. All I saw was this terrible haste, this rush to get things done, and a glint, a terrible, unsettling glint of pure greed in their eyes. It was unmistakable. They thought my old age had somehow made me deaf to their true intentions. They believed it had left me blind to the raw avarice that seemed to consume them completely now, twisting them into strangers. But I wasn't deaf. I wasn't blind. Not at all. In fact, I saw everything with a terrifying clarity. And more than anything, I saw what they were so desperate to keep hidden from me. I saw my granddaughter, Lily, my precious Lily. She was huddled in the far corner of the porch, trying her very best to be invisible, to disappear into the shadows. Just 10 years old, as I said. Her small face was pale, and her eyes were full full of tears that she clearly wasn't allowed to shed. You could see the effort she was putting into holding them back, trying to be strong, trying not to make a sound. And it was in that look, that heart-wrenching look of contained pain. It was in her desperate, silent struggle that I finally understood everything. I understood that my battle, this deep, cutting pain I was feeling, this sense of complete emotional coldness from my own children. It wasn't just for myself anymore. It was for her. It transformed me. Everything transformed in that single, agonizing moment. The pain didn't lessen, but its purpose changed. Little did they know that a mother's greatest strength isn't always found in her voice, in raising it, in shouting or arguing. Sometimes the most potent power, the most fierce resolve, is found in her protective silence. My name is Eleanor. I'm 78 years old now. It sounds like a lot, doesn't it? 78 years. Most of my life, I was a seamstress. Not the fancy kind you see on TV, but the kind who knew every stitch, every fabric, every measurement by heart. I made party dresses for young girls dreaming of their first dance, all shimmering satin and delicate lace. And sometimes I mended torn dreams too, patching up old wedding gowns for new brides, making sure they had a perfect day. My fingers, they still remember the feel of the needle, the hum of the machine. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest. It was mine. I became a widow quite early. My sweet Arthur, he was gone too soon. We had so many plans, so many dreams for our future. It hurt, of course, a pain so deep it felt like a part of me was missing. But even then, even after he left, I never truly felt alone. Not with this house, this land, with the sweat of my own labor, the tireless hours bent over my sewing machine, and the small inheritance Arthur left me. Not much, but enough. I bought this homestead. This isn't just a house to me. It never was. It was my safe haven, my sanctuary, the place where I raised my children, Mark and Sarah, with the comforting scent of apple pie always in the air and the joyous, carefree dirt on their little feet. I remember those days so vividly, the laughter echoing in the halls, the stories we'd share around the dinner table, the way the sunlight used to stream through the kitchen window in the mornings, painting everything in gold. This place, it holds every breath of my past. My life, it was always simple, but always dignified. We weren't wealthy in the way some people measure it, but there was never a lack of love in our home. Never. And I always made sure my children had the best education I could provide. That was my promise to Arthur and to them. I saved every penny, every single one. Not for myself, not for some grand trip or a fancy car. No, I saved for them, for Mark, for Sarah. This homestead, this very land we're standing on, it was the symbol of all that saving, all that sacrifice. A legacy built, stitch by stitch, with sacrifice and deep, unending love. A heritage I truly imagined they would honor, that they would cherish and preserve, not just for themselves, but for future generations of our family. For Lily, for her children. I was always very organized with my finances. Some people might say obsessive. That came from Arthur. He was a practical man, my Arthur. He taught me the importance of having everything on paper, every receipt, every deed, every bank statement. Eleanor, he'd say, never depend on favors. Always have your papers in order. That's your true independence. And I listened. I took his words to heart. I kept all our important documents, every last one, in an old leather folder. It's a bit worn now. The leather's soft from years of handling, but it's still strong. My children, Mark and Sarah, they used to laugh at me. They'd see me pulling out the folder, carefully organizing things. "Oh, Mom," Mark would say, shaking his head with a little smile, "you're so old-fashioned. Everything's digital now. You live in the past." Sarah would just roll her eyes sometimes, but gently. They thought it was endearing, maybe, my little quirks. They thought it was just me being a little out of touch. But what they didn't understand, not then, not ever, what they completely missed in their rush for progress and their easy laughter about my old ways, it was precisely in this past, the one they so readily dismissed, the past they so despised as outdated, that my true power was hidden. The shift was so subtle at first, almost imperceptible, like the slow turning of the seasons. But instead of bringing warmth, it brought a creeping coldness. My children, Mark and Sarah, they started to change. It wasn't a sudden break, not a dramatic argument. No, it was much more insidious than that. Weekend visits, the ones filled with laughter and the smell of my apple pie, slowly, almost without me noticing, began to fade. They turned into hurried phone calls, quick, rushed conversations that always felt like they were trying to get off the line. My heart would sink a little each time, but I told myself, they're busy adults now. They have their own lives, their own responsibilities. That's how it goes, right? Children grow up. But then, the nature of our conversations changed too. The easy chatter about family, about our memories, about how Lily, my sweet granddaughter, was doing in school. Those talks started to disappear. They were replaced by these long, drawn-out monologues, always about their financial difficulties, always about how high the cost of living had become. It was never just a complaint, though. It always led to the same point. They needed a capital injection for their businesses, they'd say. Mark, my son, he was trying to expand his little construction company, always talking about new projects, bigger dreams. And Sarah, my daughter, she was invested in some online boutique, selling things I didn't quite understand, always needing more inventory, more advertising. I listened. I listened with a heavy heart, a real ache in my chest. I offered what help I could, little bits of savings I had tucked away for a rainy day. But I could feel it, deep inside. It was never enough for them, never truly satisfied them. This coldness, it settled in around us, around me, like an endless winter. It was quiet, but it was biting. Sarah, my daughter, she used to bring Lily, my granddaughter, over every single afternoon after school. We'd sit on the porch. We'd bake cookies. She'd draw pictures. Those were my favorite times. But then Sarah started making excuses. Lily was too busy with school, she'd say. Too much homework. Too many extracurricular activities. The excuses piled up one after another until the visits stopped altogether. My heart ached for my granddaughter's bright presence, her innocent questions, her warm hugs. I missed her terribly. It felt like a part of my daily light had been extinguished. Mark, my son, when he bothered to call, he went straight to the point. No pleasantries, no asking how I was really doing. He just launched into it. Always about the homestead. This place, my home, my sanctuary. He'd talk about the wasted potential of the land. "So much space, Mom," he'd say, his voice almost impatient, just stuck in time. He said it was underutilized. He made it sound like a burden, not a blessing. Every single word he spoke, every phrase, it was a stab, a sharp, icy stab of ingratitude. It cut deeper than any physical pain ever could. It was the pain of disappointment, of feeling unappreciated by the very people I had poured my entire life into. I tried, you know. I really did try to justify it. I'd tell myself they're just under a lot of pressure. Adult life is stressful, Eleanor. Everyone goes through it. They're just busy, that's all. They don't mean to be unkind. They love me, really. That's what I kept repeating to myself, trying to make sense of the growing distance, the increasingly sharp edge to their voices. But deep down, way down in the quiet part of my soul, an intuition started to stir, a dark, unsettling feeling. It told me that something much darker was growing, something more sinister than just stress or busy schedules. They looked at me differently now. It wasn't the warm, loving gaze of a child looking at their mother. No, it was a cold assessment. They no longer saw me as their mother, as Eleanor, the woman who had nurtured them, who had loved them unconditionally. They looked at me as an obstacle, a problem, something that needed to be solved. The pain of their indifference, it was more cutting than any knife. It sliced through my heart, leaving me feeling exposed and incredibly vulnerable. I was just this old woman standing in the way of their ambition. That's how it felt. I just didn't imagine that their plan to solve the problem was already underway. The invitation for what Mark and Sarah called Sunday lunch at the homestead, it felt like a tiny flicker of hope. I hadn't seen Lily in so long, and I missed the comforting routine of our family gatherings, the way the house used to fill with warmth. I remember dressing carefully that morning, picking out a favorite old cardigan, feeling a quiet anticipation I hadn't felt in a long time. But as soon as my children's car pulled up the gravel driveway, as soon as I stepped onto the porch to greet them, I knew something was terribly wrong. There was no welcoming scent of food wafting from the kitchen, no comforting aroma of roasted chicken or simmering gravy. Instead, the air itself felt heavy, tense, like the suffocating quiet before a storm. It was the air of a business meeting, cold and sharp, not a family meal. Mark and Sarah, they didn't even bother with small talk. They just guided me directly to the porch, to the very spot where they'd first brought up the idea of the assisted living facility. And there, sitting at the old wooden table, was a man I didn't know. My son introduced him. The words hung in the air, heavy and solid, like stones falling into a quiet well. A real estate agent here, at my home. My heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Then they began to speak. Not to me, really, but over me. around me, as if I wasn't even there. Mr. Davies unfolded a large map, pointing at parts of my land. Mark and Sarah chimed in, their voices too loud, too confident. The plan, they explained, was to sell the entire homestead. My sanctuary, my life's work, to a construction company. They wanted to erect some kind of luxury condominium complex right here, on the very ground where I had raised them, where Arthur and I had planted the oak tree. My pleas about the memories, about every single part of this place, holding a piece of my soul, they just floated away, unheard, like whispers in a strong wind. "Mother, be reasonable," Mark said. His voice clipped, almost impatient. It was a coldness that pierced right through me, freezing my very soul. He didn't look at me, not really. His eyes were fixed on the blueprint, on the numbers. "This will ensure a comfortable future for all of us," he continued, as if reading from a script. "You'll go to a great senior living residence. It's got everything you could want. Activities, friends, no more worries about upkeep." Sarah nodded along, a tight, polite smile on her face. They humiliated me right there, in my own home, in the place where I should have felt safest. They treated me like a stubborn, senile child, unable to grasp their brilliant, modern logic. My tears began to fall, hot tracks down my cheeks, but they didn't even seem to notice. Or if they did, they simply chose to ignore them. It was then, in that moment of profound indignity, that my gaze, almost by instinct, found Lily, my sweet granddaughter. She was standing near the door, just a little ways from us, trying her best to be unseen. Her face was so pale, even paler than usual. My daughter Sarah had a hand on Lily's shoulder, holding her tightly. It wasn't a comforting touch. It was a firm grip, a silent warning. Lily's eyes, those beautiful, clear eyes, they were fixed on me, and as I looked at her, I saw it. A single, perfect tear, slowly, silently, rolled down her cheek. She didn't make a sound, not a sob, not a sniffle. Her little mouth was pressed into a tight line. But her silent tears, they screamed. They screamed everything I needed to know. She was being coerced. She was suffering, just as much as I was. Perhaps even more. In that instant, my burning, suffocating pain, the humiliation, the sheer shock of it all, it gave way. It gave way to a fierce, crystal clear clarity. And in that clarity, amidst the ruins of my heart, I knew exactly what I needed to do. In that instant, my burning, suffocating pain, the humiliation, the sheer shock of it all, it gave way. It gave way to a fierce, crystal clear clarity. And in that clarity, amidst the ruins of my heart, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't scream. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue or plead any further. There was no point. Their minds were already made up, their eyes blind to anything but their own desires. All I did was slowly, deliberately, wipe the hot tears from my face with the back of my hand. Then I looked at each of them. First Mark, my son, then Sarah, my daughter. One by one, I held their gaze, not with anger, but with a quiet intensity. I wanted to engrave that scene into my memory, to remember every detail, every cold expression, every calculating glance. I knew I would need to recall it later. After what felt like an eternity, I nodded slowly. Just a small, almost imperceptible nod. A gesture I knew they would interpret as defeat, as me finally giving in, surrendering to their will. But it was the exact opposite. It was the profound, powerful silence of someone who finds a deeper, greater purpose right in the middle of the storm. The pain was still there, a dull ache, but it was overshadowed by a sudden, fierce determination. My focus in that moment shifted entirely. It was no longer about trying to save the homestead for myself. It was no longer about clinging to my past. No. My one and only focus now was on protecting my granddaughter's future, Lily's future, her precious, innocent life. That night, sleep was impossible. My mind raced, images flashing behind my closed eyelids. The most persistent one was Lily, small and helpless, standing there, her face pale, that single, silent tear tracing a path down her cheek. It haunted me, that tear. It burned in my memory. I kept thinking about Arthur, my late husband. He always had a way of cutting through the noise, of seeing things clearly. Eleanor, he used to say, his voice kind but firm. Our greatest wealth isn't what we have in our pockets, or even what we own. Our true wealth is what we protect, the people we love, the values we hold dear. I finally, truly understood what he meant. My children, Mark and Sarah, they were so utterly blind with their greed, so consumed by money and their own selfish ambitions. They had completely forgotten who I was. They had forgotten that I was the woman who had built all of this homestead, this life with my own two hands. They thought I was just an old woman easily pushed aside, but I wasn't. The very next morning, I put my plan into action. I told Sarah, who had dropped Lily off and was lingering, that I needed to go to the pharmacy for some forgotten medication. It was a simple pretext, one that didn't raise any suspicion. As soon as she left, I called for a taxi. I didn't look for a therapist, not for a shoulder to cry on. I didn't call a friend to confide in. No, I knew exactly where I needed to go. I went straight to downtown Houston, to an office building I hadn't visited in years. The office of an old family friend, a lawyer, Mr. Davies. He had been Arthur's lawyer and mine for decades. A kind, quiet man with wise eyes. My children, Mark and Sarah, they didn't even remember he existed. He was part of my old-fashioned past, the one they so readily dismissed. But I knew he was the right person. I clutched my old leather folder tightly in my lap during the taxi ride. The one Mark used to laugh at. The one that held all my important papers. Every deed, every document, every carefully kept record. The change in my will, the one I knew I needed to make, that was just the beginning of everything. A simple alteration to a piece of paper, but it represented so much more. It was the first step on my own chessboard. They thought they had cornered me. They thought they had won, but I was just moving the pieces on my own chessboard. My journey to Mr. Davies' office. It was like stepping onto a new path, a path I had hidden from them. But I knew, deep in my bones, that the real struggle was still ahead. And sure enough, the pressure, it just swelled like a storm gathering strength. In the days that followed, it was relentless. Mark, my son, he called me every single day. Not to ask how I was doing, not to talk about old times, but to push. Always to push. "Mom, have you considered our proposal?" he'd ask, his voice tight with impatience. "It's really for the best, you know." Each call was a new wave of expectation, washing over me, trying to drown my resolve. And Sarah, my daughter, she joined in too, though her tactics were a little different. My phone, it started to buzz constantly with messages, pictures, pictures of luxurious assisted living facilities. They looked like fancy resorts with swimming pools and bright, airy common rooms. She'd attach messages to them, almost chirpy, as if this was some grand vacation plan. "Look how beautiful, Mom," she'd write. "So many activities for you to enjoy. Imagine all the friends you'll make." They acted as if the sale of my home, the dismantling of my entire life, was already a done deal. As if my signature on that contract was just a tiny, insignificant formality, something they had already accounted for. It was like they had completely erased my wishes, my feelings, my very existence from the equation. But the worst part, the part that truly twisted my heart, was the isolation. They started to forbid Lily from seeing me, my sweet granddaughter. "Mum," Sarah would say, her voice firm, "you're making Lily sad with your negative ideas. She's sensitive, and you're just upsetting her." It was an excuse, of course, a cruel, calculated way to cut me off, to weaken me. I'd call desperate to hear Lily's voice, to just know she was all right. Sometimes I could hear her in the background, a little whisper, a small sound that brought a flood of longing to my chest. But Sarah would always make up some new excuse. Lily was busy with homework. Lily was at a friend's house. Lily was sleeping. There was always a reason, a barrier, preventing her from coming to the phone, from coming to me. I felt like an emotional prisoner in my own home, abandoned by the very people to whom I had dedicated every breath, every ounce of my life. The loneliness, it was immense, a cavernous space where laughter and love used to be, and the longing for Lily, it physically hurt. It was a constant ache behind my ribs, a tightness in my throat that made it hard to breathe sometimes. I missed her bright eyes, her small hand in mine, her innocent questions that always reminded me of how much good there still was in the world. Then they took it a step further. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen, making myself a simple cup of tea, when a car pulled up the driveway. It wasn't Mark or Sarah's. Two men got out. One was Mark, of course, looking stern and businesslike, but the other was a stranger, holding a large roll of blueprints, just like the real estate agent had. Mark didn't even bother to come to the door. He just led the man, an architect, he later told me, around the side of the house, onto my land, without a word, without asking my permission. They just started walking, measuring, pointing, talking in low, serious voices, as if the homestead was already theirs, as if I wasn't even there. I watched them from the kitchen window, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. My home, my sanctuary. They were just walking all over it, invading it, measuring it for destruction. The disrespect was a bitter taste in my mouth. That place, this beautiful, peaceful homestead, once a haven of calm and love, had become a battlefield, a staging ground for their ambitions. I felt the peak of pain then, a raw, sharp edge of powerlessness that cut deeper than anything before. It was a suffocating feeling, knowing they were so close to taking everything. But even then, even in that moment of despair, I clung. I clung to the memory of Lily's silent tears, the image of her pale face, her suppressed sobs. It was for her. All of this, it was for her. They were so focused on the prize that they didn't realize they were walking straight into their own trap. They were so focused on the prize that they didn't realize they were walking straight into their own trap. The final meeting. It happened at the homestead, just as I knew it would. They arrived exactly on time, as always, punctual when there was money to be made. Mark and Sarah walked up the porch steps, confident, almost triumphant. They carried the contracts, neat stacks of paper, and a gleaming pen ready for my signature. The real estate agent, the same man who had been here before, was by their side, a wide, almost sickening smile plastered on his face. Everything was set. The stage was ready. They sat me in the same chair on the porch, the very same chair, the one where they had first dropped the bomb about the assisted living facility, the one where I had felt so utterly humiliated, so small, so irrelevant. It was the stage of my deepest pain, my quietest suffering. They thought they were bringing me back to the scene of my defeat, to finalize their victory. Mark leaned forward, pushing the thick stack of papers across the small wooden table toward me. His hand was steady, his eyes bright with expectation. "Done, Mom," he said, his voice smooth, devoid of any real emotion. Just a simple, almost dismissive tone. "Just sign here and we'll end this drama. It's for everyone's good." He even offered the pen, holding it out, waiting. Sarah nodded along a little too eagerly, her gaze flitting between the papers and my face, as if eager to see the moment I finally broke, the moment I surrendered. I took a deep breath, a slow, steady breath that felt like it filled every inch of my lungs, giving me strength. My hands, they trembled just slightly, a tiny tremor that only I could feel. It wasn't fear, not anymore. It was the last echo of the pain, a memory of the humiliation, transforming into resolve. With a firm gaze, I looked at Mark, then at Sarah, and then at the agent. I didn't say a word. I just pushed the contract, gently but definitively, back across the table, out of my reach. Then, slowly, deliberately, I opened my purse. The old leather folder was inside, just where I always kept it. It felt worn, familiar, comforting under my fingertips. I pulled it out, placed it on the table between us. A stark contrast to their pristine, modern contracts. And from deep inside it, from its most protected compartment, I retrieved a document. It was yellowed with time, the edges soft and slightly frayed, but the ink, though faded, was still perfectly clear. It was the original deed, the definitive deed to the homestead. My homestead. I smoothed it carefully on the table. It lay there, a quiet testament to years of struggle, years of saving, years of undeniable truth. "Read," I said. My voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was calm, but it was absolutely unbreakable. It carried the weight of 78 years, of a life lived with integrity. Read the name of the sole owner of this property. The silence that followed was deafening. It hung heavy in the air, thick and suffocating. Mark and Sarah exchanged quick, confused glances. The agent, his smile faltering, picked up the deed. His eyes scanning the document, his brow furrowed. Then Mark snatched it from him, his eyes darting across the faded text. Sarah leaned in, reading over his shoulder. Disbelief washed over their faces first, a flicker of confusion, then a dawning horror, and finally, shock. Pure, unadulterated shock. The homestead. This house, this land, this entire property, it was never in my late husband Arthur's name. Not entirely. It was a secret I had kept, a quiet strength I had built. Years after we were married, after I had built up my seamstress business, I had used my own money, every single penny I had painstakingly saved, to buy this land myself. I registered it solely in my name. It was mine, totally and uniquely mine. Arthur had always agreed it was a wise decision, a way to protect us, to protect me. And that's what I told them now, my voice clear. This was my property, bought with my own sweat, my own skill, my own foresight. And then I delivered the final, decisive blow. Furthermore, I continued, my voice steady, meeting their stunned gazes, I have informed Mr. Davies, my lawyer, who you may recall was Arthur's lawyer as well, that my will has been changed. I paused, letting the words sink in. Everything I own, including this homestead, will be left in a trust fund for Lily's education and future. I saw their eyes widen, their mouths fall slightly open. It will be administered by Mr. Davies, with clear instructions. The homestead will not be sold. Never. Not while I live and not after. Justice, I realized, didn't come with screams or bitter accusations. It didn't need grand gestures of revenge. It came quietly, with dignity, with the irrefutable truth written plainly on a yellowed piece of paper. The sandcastle they built on my supposed fragility crumbled in an instant. My children, Mark and Sarah, they just stood there, staring at the yellowed deed in disbelief. Their faces, usually so composed, so sure of themselves, contorted into a mixture of shock and something else I hadn't seen in a long time. Pure, raw anger. Not at me, not at first, but at the situation, at the unforeseen twist. The real estate agent, he just stammered, picking up his papers, looking utterly flustered. He knew a lost cause when he saw one. There was no more argument, no more pleading, no more pushing contracts. There was just silence, a heavy, seething silence that hung between us. They turned, without another word, without a backward glance, and walked off the porch. I watched them get into their car. Mark revved the engine, pulled out of my driveway, kicking up gravel, and they were gone. They left that day, and they never came back. Not for a visit, not for a holiday, not even a phone call. The silence they had imposed on me before, it became absolute. Their greed, their cold ambition, it cost them more than just the homestead. It cost them a mother, and it cost them a daughter. Lily's father and aunt, they were simply gone from her life now, too consumed by their own disappointment and shame to acknowledge what they had truly lost. It was a heavy truth, but it was their choice. In the following weeks, the house felt strangely quiet at first, like the echoes of their confrontation still lingered in the air. But then, a new kind of quiet settled in, a peaceful quiet. My lawyer, Mr. Davies, he moved quickly and efficiently. He helped me reestablish Lily's visits, not as a favor from Sarah, but as a right. He laid out the legal protections for her, for me. Sarah had little choice but to comply, though I could feel her resentment even through the phone line. But resentment couldn't stop the inevitable. Soon my sweet Lily, my little granddaughter, came to live with me at the homestead. It wasn't a temporary stay, not a visit. It was her new home. And just like that, the silence of the house, the empty spaces that had felt so cold and vast, they were filled again. Not with the anxious energy of my children, but with something far more precious, with laughter. Lily's bright, innocent laughter echoing through the rooms. With stories, quiet whispers shared before bedtime, tales of her day at school, of her dreams, and with music. There was an old guitar, dusty and forgotten, that used to belong to her grandfather, my Arthur. Lily, with a determination that reminded me so much of myself, decided she wanted to learn to play it. And so, the soft, hesitant strumming, the occasional plink of a wrong note, mixed with her delighted squeals as she finally got a chord right. Those sounds became the new soundtrack of our days. It was a beautiful melody of new beginnings. Our routine, it's simple now, but it's full. We tend the garden together, just like I used to with my own children. Lily loves to dig in the dirt, to feel the soil between her fingers, just like I did. We bake apple pies, the scent of cinnamon and worn fruit filling every corner of the house. A comforting aroma that truly makes it a home. And in the afternoons, especially when the sun is warm and low, we read books together on the porch, under the dappled shade of that old oak tree that Arthur and I planted so many years ago. It, not just a house, it's a place of healing. For me, and for Lily too, I think. There is no luxury here, not in the way my children envisioned it. No fancy new condominium complex, no grand events, no lavish parties. Just the quiet, steady peace of one day flowing into the next. Each day built on the solid foundation of truth, of what is right, and of the unwavering love that survived the storm. The love that now blooms, fresh and vibrant, between a grandmother and her granddaughter. I don't feel hate for Mark and Sarah. Not anymore. There's no bitterness in my heart, no desire for vengeance. Only a deep, quiet sadness for what they became, for what they lost, for the choices they made that closed their hearts and blinded their eyes. But looking at Lily, watching her grow, watching her learn. I see the seed of hope blooming, strong and resilient. I see a girl who is not only strong, but deeply sensitive, compassionate. She is learning every single day that true value isn't found in money or possessions, but in character, in kindness, in the courage to protect those we love, to stand up for what is right, even when it's hard. I didn't rebuild my life with anger or a need for retribution. I rebuilt it with dignity, with clarity, with a clean soul. And I discovered that sometimes the greatest inheritance we can leave is the example that it's never too late to start over. Yes, it's never too late. That's something I truly believe now, with every fiber of my being. Looking back, there were moments, so many moments, when I felt utterly lost, when the world seemed to shrink around me, when the pain of my children's indifference felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I felt small. I felt forgotten. I felt like a dusty old book on a forgotten shelf, no longer relevant, no longer valuable. But those feelings, they weren't the end. They were just a painful beginning. A harsh teacher, perhaps, but a teacher nonetheless. What I learned through all of it, through the sharp sting of betrayal and the quiet ache of loneliness, is that life has a way of showing you where your true strength lies. It's not in the loudest voice, or the biggest house, or the most money. It's in the quiet resilience of your spirit. It's in the dignity you choose to carry, even when others try to strip it away. I realized that my worth wasn't tied to my children's approval or their plans for my future. My worth was always, always within me. It was in the hands that had stitched 1,000 dresses, in the heart that had loved so fiercely, in the mind that, even when tired, still held its own wisdom. Being elderly, you sometimes feel like you become invisible, like your opinions don't matter as much, or your experiences are just quaint stories from a bygone era, something to be politely nodded at, but never truly considered. People talk over you, or they make decisions for you, assuming they know best, assuming you're incapable of thinking for yourself, of managing your own life. My children certainly did. They saw me as a problem to be solved, a piece of the past that needed to be neatly too. I was a person, a woman with a lifetime of lessons, of struggles, of triumphs. A woman who built a home, not just a house. A woman who deserved respect, not just a comfortable place to disappear. They forgot that the wisdom of years isn't measured in quick profits or digital files, but in patience, in understanding, in resilience. And that's a truth that applies to all of us, no matter our age, no matter our circumstances. We all deserve that basic human acknowledgement. It made me think about dignity, true dignity. It's not something you can buy or sell or give away. It's something you hold onto fiercely, even when the world tries to take it from you. It's the quiet knowing that you are valuable just as you are, regardless of age or circumstance. And for us, for the elderly among us, that dignity is paramount. It's the right to be seen, to be heard, to be included, and to make our own choices. To live in our own homes, if we choose, surrounded by the memories we built. rather than being shuffled off to places chosen for convenience or profit. My home, this homestead, it isn't just wood and brick. It's a testament to a life lived, a symbol of independence, a place where generations were nurtured. It was my right to decide its future, not theirs, and I'll won that right back, not with anger, but with truth, with a quiet, undeniable truth that had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. I look at Lily now, my sweet Lily, her laughter echoing through these rooms, the sound of her learning the guitar a joyful noise, and I see a future built on something real, on love, on respect, on shared moments, not on money or ambition. She is learning that true inheritance isn't just about what's written in a will. It's about what's written in your heart. It's about being kind. It's about standing up for yourself, quietly if you must, but firmly. And it's about valuing the people in your life, truly valuing them, not as assets or obstacles, but as human beings with their own stories, their own worth. My new life here, it's not glamorous, but it's rich. Rich with purpose, rich with peace, rich with the simple, profound joy of living each day authentically. And I stand here, an old woman on her porch, under the shade of an old oak tree, and I want you to know this. And you? Had you ever felt invisible to the very people who should matter most? Have you ever felt that your history and your memories were being erased by those you helped to raise? Know that your silent strength has immense value. Your story matters. Your dignity is non-negotiable. And your past, no matter how old you are, holds the blueprint for your future, if only you choose to claim it. There's more to share, more to understand about this journey. But for now, just hold on to that thought, your strength, your value. There's more to share, more to understand about this journey. But for now, just hold on to that thought, your strength, your value. And mine, I found, is abundant, more than I ever knew. When I sit here on the porch now, with the gentle hum of Lily's quiet laughter floating from inside the house, or the soft strum of that old guitar, a profound peace settles over me. It's a peace that comes not from forgetting the pain, but from transforming it, from knowing that I walked through a fire and I emerged stronger, more authentically myself than ever before. This homestead, it breathes again, and so do I. Sometimes Lily and I will just sit here under the old oak tree, listening to the birds, feeling the gentle breeze. She'll lean her head against my shoulder, and in that simple act, I feel the warmth of true connection. No hidden agendas, no unspoken demands, just pure, uncomplicated love. We talk about anything and everything. Her dreams for the future, her school days, the stories I tell her about Arthur, her grandfather, and what this land means. She's learning to cherish it, not as something to be sold, but as a living testament to family, to resilience, to home. It's a quiet life, yes, but it's full, fuller than I ever imagined it could be. I think about those moments with Mark and Sarah, the coldness in their eyes, the words that cut like ice, and I don't feel anger anymore. It's a strange thing, this letting go. What remains is a quiet sadness for them, for the path they chose, for the emptiness they must feel, even with all their pursuit of wealth. They lost so much more than they gained. They lost the connection to their past, to their roots, to the unconditional love that was always here for them. That's a heavy burden, a loneliness I hope they one day find a way to heal. But that healing has to start with them. My path is here, now, with Lily, with this land and with the dignity I reclaimed. It took me a long time to understand that true power isn't about control over others or about accumulating things. It's about knowing who you are, what you stand for, and having the courage to protect it, quietly and firmly. It's about standing in your truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means letting go of what you thought your life would be, what you thought your family would be. It's about choosing yourself, choosing your peace, choosing the integrity of your heart. And for me, that choice meant choosing Lily, choosing this homestead, choosing a life of simple, honest grace. My days are filled now with the small, beautiful things. The scent of fresh-baked bread, the feel of warm soil in my hands. The sound of Lily practicing her scales on Arthur's old guitar. I watch her grow, watch her learn, watch her gentle spirit bloom, and I know that this is the real legacy. This is the comfort, the richness, the abundance that truly matters. It's not about grand gestures or vast sums of money. It's about the quiet strength that lives in your spirit, the love that flows freely, and the peace that comes from living a life aligned with your deepest values. And as I look out from this porch at the sun setting over the fields, painting the sky in soft oranges and purples, I feel a profound sense of serenity, a quiet joy that whispers, "You did it, Eleanor. You're home." And I want to share that feeling with you, that sense of connection, of shared humanity. And if you want to keep receiving real stories like this one, pay attention. YouTube may be unsubscribing you without warning. Confirm you're still subscribed to the channel and activate the bell. It means the world to me to know we're connected.